Alright, welcome to another episode of the Middle Aged Metalhead. So, today I'm going to do another quick roundup of five death metal albums from the 90s. The first pick that I'm going to talk about today, you could argue that it's maybe not uh, death metal in its purest form. Maybe you could call it proto death metal, but I always thought of this as a death thrash kind of band. And that is from the UK, Cerebral Fix, with their second album, Tower of Spite. Now, Cerebral Fix started off as a sort of hardcore crossover band with their first album, which came out in 88 or 89, I think. It was called Life Sucks and Then You Die. Then, by the time the second album came around, the rhythm section had changed, most importantly. You had Frank Healy on bass, and Andy Baker on drums. Frank Healy, of course, is currently playing with Memoriam. He's played with a bunch of UK death metal bands, including Benediction. He's played with Bolt Thrower, and yeah, Andy Baker, I think, started off with the UK hardcore legends, the Varukers, and he's played with a bunch of bands as well. And I'm thinking what they brought to the band was a much more heavier metal influence. And Tower of Spite is basically mid-paced, thrashy, kind of death metal, occasionally veers into D-beat style, British hardcore, but this is some seriously, seriously good music. And that's what the cover looks like. This was on Road Racer back in the day. Let me just show you the CD. There's the CD for you. And overall, I think Simon Forrest was the name of the vocalist, a very gnarly kind of vocalist. You could understand pretty much what he was talking about, but it was just on that borderline between death and thrash metal. And if you've never heard of this band, definitely worth checking out. It's not streaming anywhere, but you can find the album on YouTube. I don't think this one has ever been reissued as well. Actually, I don't think any of the Cerebral Fix albums have been reissued, but Tower of Spite, then they had another album called Death Erotica, which was quite good. But yeah, look up Cerebral Fix, look up their second album, Tower of Spite. This is really good UK death thrash. Next up from 1991 and Sweden. Now, most of you into death metal should have heard this band. In case you haven't, this is Carbonized for the Security. Now, this album, I think originally it started with the Dismember vocalist on vocals, but around 1991, Christopher Johnson from Therion joined the band on guitar and vocals. The Therion bass player, I forget what his name is, but he was, yeah, on bass as well. And what we have here is Lars Rosenberg. Yeah, that was his name. Or is his name, since he's still around and still playing in Therion, I think. But what we have here is basically furious, absolutely furious death metal, a little bit of grind. The band would, with their second and third albums, move into a much more prog rock, experimental, avant garde, call it what you want kind of direction. But this album just absolutely rules. This is Carbonized for the Security, and it's been reissued a number of times. This is, I think, the most recent reissue that came out on Vic Records. Overall, this band has killer grooves. They blast like nobody's business, and it's just really, really furious stuff. So, band well worth checking out. Staying in 1991, but moving to Finland. This is Funebre and Children of Scorn, or Children of the Scorn. Now, of course, this is the artwork that came with the reissue. This is what the original artwork looks like. And this is pretty much classic Finnish death metal, incredibly heavy. They move from mid-paced, slightly doomy death metal riffs to slightly more sped up-tempo death metal. They have this swagger that occasionally reminds me of Black Sabbath, that Finnish sense of very particular and peculiar melody is in spades on this album. Funebre, Children of the Scorn, absolutely killer release. Next, we will move on to Germany, and a band that is still around, still releasing albums. Their last album released, I think, 2 years ago was an absolute banger. This is from 1992, Blood, Christbait. This is the band's second full length after the absolutely classic Impulse to Destroy. And the band moved slightly away from the death grind sound of Impulse to Destroy to a more death metal sound, you could say. They still grind in a few places, but they also slow it down. Massive riffs again, absolutely demonic vocals, just an superb album. Christbait, Blood. If you've never heard Blood, this is easily one of the most overlooked bands in that entire death grind space. Generally, Germany death metal, you'd maybe think of Morgoth. In modern times, I guess Disbelief had a couple of really good albums, but Blood kind of gets they're not as famous or as well known as they should be. And if you've never heard Blood, I mean, Impulse to Destroy is absolutely essential, but Christbait is a close second. This is an album really worth getting. Incredibly heavy stuff, maybe a bit too heavy for the casual death metal listener, but yeah, superb album. And finally, we will move to the United States, 1992 again, and this is Silent Scream, from the darkest depths of the imagination. And what we've got here is really raw death thrash again. There are hints of melody, there's hints of this kind of grinding nature of riffs, and overall this is really good. It's got this dark atmosphere right through that kind of reminds me of Autopsy at times, but musically they're not anywhere close to Autopsy. They have a much more thrash sensibility, but mixed up with that early 90s American death metal style. Really good. This one is actually, I think, still available on Dive Bomb. For some reason, this is another one of those bands that's really overlooked, and Dive Bomb, as you know, or as you should know, make absolutely superb reissues with liner notes, an interview with the band, great pictures from their heyday, lyrics. I mean, if you find the CD, it's a no-brainer. Just get this. This is Silent Scream, from the darkest depths of the imagination. And those were my 5 picks for today. So yeah, drop me a comment, tell me about some obscure, overlooked death metal albums that you think people should know about. Press the like button. Yeah, that is supposedly helps in getting more views. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And yeah, have a good weekend. Cheers. Stay metal. Stay safe.